Hello guys, welcome to my video. In this video, I will build a to-do list using object-oriented programming in JavaScript. I hope you enjoy this video. So before we start building this project, I would like to show you a demo of the project and tell you what you will learn after the completion of this project. This is just a simple to-do list where user can add and delete the list. We will implement the local storage in this project as well, so when we refresh the page, we shouldn't lose the data in the DOM. In this video, you will learn how to make objects using object-oriented programming, how to implement object-oriented programming methods, how to use spread operator, how to store data in local storage, and finally, how to delete data from the local storage. So let's start building this project. To build this project, we only need 3 files for our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code. First, I start with HTML, change the title of the project, and then link my CSS and JavaScript files to my HTML file. And then open the file in live server. Now our code environment is ready and let's just start writing some code. I start the project with the container class and inside that I will have a title of h1. In my CSS file I will do some general setups. I grab the star to target all HTML tags and give them margin, padding, box sizing and font family. In the body tag I will give it a width of 100% and a background color of sky below. And then I will grab the container class and give it a width and margin 0 auto to put that in the center. And for the title class, I will give a text align of center to bring it in the middle of the container class. I go back to my HTML file and add a form tag. Inside that, I will add an input with the type of text and button with the class of btn. I open my CSS file again and add style to my form tag. I give it a background color and add a margin tab to it. Then add a display and align items to it. To make them separated from each other, I grab the input tag and add a flex one to it. Then I add a padding to the input tag, set the border to none, give it a background color and get rid of the outline. For the button, I will give it a padding, background color, set the color to white, give a cursor sign and get rid of the border. In the font tag, I add a little border radius and make the overflow to hidden. Now it is time to make our list container. In my HTML file, I add a div with the class of list and inside that, we need to add another div for our single to-do. Inside that, we will have a p tag which contains our text and a span tag which will be our delete button. In CSS file for our single to-do div, we will give a display to flex, align item to the center, a background color, margin to the top, a padding, and finally we need to add a gap tag to separate our text from our remove. For the span tag, we just add a cursor sign. As you can see, if I copy and paste this single to-do, we will have our to-dos listed in the DOM the way we want. Now as the HTML and CSS part of the project is done, we need to move to the JavaScript. First, I add data attributes to the tags which I will grab them in the JavaScript. Now I'm gonna open my JS file. First of all, I grab the tags I need in JavaScript. Then I add an even listener to the form tag. Inside that, to get rid of auto refresh, we need to prevent the default. Now it is time to make our instance object with the help of object-oriented programming classes. I name the class to-do and give the constructor ID and to-do input as argument. Inside the form, we need to make the object of the to-do and pass the ID and input value as the parameter. we need to grab the input from HTML by data attribute. And for the ID, we need to make a new variable and assign to it the method random times a random number to generate a unique ID. Now if I console log the to-do object and write something in the input, you can see that we could generate a new object of ID and our to-do text. Now it is time to display this data in the DOM. To do that, first we need to make an empty array and push the to-do object to this empty array with the help of a spread operator. Now if I console log the empty array and add some text in my input, you can see we will have an array of objects in the console. Once we have the data in the array, we need to make another class by the name of UI to display our data. Inside that, we need to have a static method and name that display data. Inside the method, we need to define a variable, and inside that, we need to iterate over the array, return all data and display them in the HTML code which we have styled earlier. I copy the HTML code and comment them out in the HTML file, then add it inside the display data variable, and change the inner data of this HTML code with the new data. Now we need to use the inner HTML to append this variable to the list div, which is the parent element of the to-do, and add the join method to get rid of extra commas which comes from the array. Then we need to call the display method under the form, but because it is a static method, we need to call it by its class name, which is UI. Now if I write something in the input, it will print the data in the template which we have designed earlier. To keep the trash icon far from the text, we need to go to the CSS file and add a justify content to space between to the to-do div. Now here we have another problem. If I type something in the input and click the submit button, the text is still in the input, but we want that to be disappeared. To do that, we need to add another static method and call that clear input. Inside that, we need to assign an empty string to the input.value, and then call that method under the for. Now it is time to add a remove functionality. At first, we need to remove it from the UI, and then we must implement another functionality to remove it from the array. To remove from the UI, we need to add another method called remove todo, and add an event listener to the parent element of the to-do, which is lists. Inside the event listener, we need to check if the remove class exists inside the list div. Now we need to add a remove class to our remove button. So this code means that we ask the JavaScript to check if there is a remove class inside the list div. Then we want to console log this remove text. Now if I add a text and click the trash button, it will give me the remove text in the console. Now that we have access to the remove button, we need to remove the console log and instead write e.target.parent_element.remove to remove the to-do from the UI. It is working perfectly. Now it is time to delete it from the array. To do this, we need to add a data-id equal to the item.id in our span tag first. Then we need to use e.target.dataset.id to grab the ID inside the remove method and assign that to the btn ID variable. Then make another static method and pass the ID as an argument. We need to write that method and receive the ID as parameter. Inside the method, we need to filter the to-do array and set the ID of the array to not equal to the ID which we have passed from the remove method and assign it to the to-do array itself. We could successfully delete the to-do from the array. Now it is time to implement our local storage. To implement our local storage, we need to make another class and name that storage. Inside the storage class, we need to add a method called add2storage, and this method will push the data to the local storage. Okay, so now to push the data, we need to define the storage variable and assign the following code to it. Local storage.setItem, which has a key call to do inside the parentheses. Then return the variable. Now we need to call this method using storage class name under the form. If I type something in the input, you can see we have data pushed in our local storage. Now it is time to grab this data using getItem and display them in the DOM. To do that, we need to make another method and call that getStorage. Inside this, we need to define a variable first, and inside that, we need to set a condition. We check if the local storage.getItem that has a key of to do is equal to null. We want to return an empty array. Otherwise, we want to get whatever data is stored in the local storage and return the storage variable. Now instead of this empty array, we need to write the getStorage method. But here we have an error and it says we can't have access to the local storage before the initialization. For that cause, I moved the storage class to the top of my JS code. Now as you can see, if I write something in here and click the submit button, it shows the data, but when I refresh it, the data is disappeared. That is because we call the display method under the form and it won't be displayed if we don't click the button. So to solve this problem, we need to set an event listener to the DOM content loaded and call this method under that. Now you can see we have all items displayed in the DOM. Even if I refresh the page, it won't be dissipated. We need to add the remove to do method under the DOM content loaded as well. And in remove array to do method, we need to update the local storage as well. It is because when we remove from local storage, we need to update the data. Now we have a to-do list which you can add, delete, and store the data in the local storage. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed this.